M. Ross. Hi, I don't think we've met before. Oh, sorry, we can't hear you. Ooh, Dustin, you are looking very comfortable. I like that.
This is not the best angle, but I'm sitting on my porch today. It's a mistake.
Venice. No, we're still not hearing you. Down at the bottom, the little microphone thing might have a caret beside it where you can choose a different input.
It's like audio might not be native.
The other day I had a pair of Bluetooth headphones connected, but I didn't realize it. Couldn't hear anything. Thought it was the problem was on the other end. Yeah. All right. Well, while you work to figure that out, um, Matt, how are you doing today?
So far, so good, even though I got home a little bit late from rock climbing last night.
Very good. And Dustin, things okay in your world?
Yep. I went out on a nice little hike with some botanists on the Taconic Trail at the corner of Vermont and Massachusetts and New York yesterday.
Cool.
It was beautiful. I had a good time. I saw some interesting plants. So.
Sweet.
Now you can hear me.
We
Yes.
can indeed. Hello, hello.
We just needed a little filler.
Awesome. No, nice to meet everyone. Yes, my name's Max. I actually, TaskWarrior, I think was my first open source contribution back in 20, I want to say 18, maybe 17.
Wow.
Back then, I think I was working with Thomas, who was reviewing my PRs. Um, but yeah, I've been since then. I mean, okay, got more into open source, but haven't had time to contribute much back. So as of now, mostly a user silently observing the progress of the repository. But yeah,
Very cool. Well, welcome.
thank you.
This is great. Um, since Felix isn't around to show us how he uses TaskWarrior, you want to talk a little bit about how you use it?
Sure, I can do that. Yeah, I use it. So I'm still on 2.6. I have to admit, been holding off with migrating. I think I very briefly just before this peeked into the recording from a month ago when I think Matt you were talking about how you are now synchronizing your tasks and the Task Warrior 3 to your phone. That's the one thing that's still holding me off a little bit as well because I commute a lot on the train and then I want to be able to quickly jot down tasks on the phone. So I still use the Foreground app, but I was actually I think Dustin we might have had an encounter on GitHub a few weeks ago where I tried to understand the interaction between Task Warrior and Task Champion. Um, because I for my work I program a lot in Python and Rust. I actually a different side project of mine is a terminal user interface or also just command line interface for reference management. And there I am using a Python library called Textual. And they very recently actually added support for running such terminal user interfaces in the web browser, which means you can very easily host this application and then run that. And I was thinking it should be fairly easy to make a very simplified interface in Python using this, which you can then host on your server and access in that way. And I've been meaning to get into that, but time has been tough. And I think the Python bindings for Task Champion are still work in progress. But yeah, so what I use it for, I use it for everyday task management, both for work and personal. I do heavily synchronize with my multiple devices.
Mm.
Um, but Yeah, nothing fancy with recurrence or anything. I pretty much just stick to the basics. And yeah, I also don't have any UDAs or anything. Just it suits my purposes for what I need.
Mm.
Fairly vanilla, so I like that about it.
Mm.
That's really cool. Thank you for that. The idea of using textualize really appeals because I think TaskWarrior is a command line utility, and that's kind of a lot of its strength, right? So building a web interface to it feels convenient, but also feels like you're sort of betraying the purpose. But textual is kind of a nice mix of those two.
Mm.
And especially if you can do it on the web, you can still click on things when you need to, but you still feel like you're
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't want to redo the interface. I would really like it to just be a quick way to view a task, but also have the ability to just inject a single task by noting it down, even if it just goes into like an inbox. So I have a tag that is like, or an alias actually in my shell that's just I jot down a task that goes into the inbox, just a description, no tags, no project, no priority, nothing.
Mm.
And then every day I check my inbox and then associate each task to a project, or if it's less than 5 minutes, I just do it.
Mm.
And that will probably just be the only thing that you could do in that application, at least for the beginning, right? It just needs to be something very simple to note something down, so I don't forget.
Yeah.
I think I think this was last week, but I used Termux. So you probably can't read that, and that's okay. But this is nice because it feels like command line feels very familiar, but it's also very difficult to type. Things like that. Because I do the same things. I'll be, at a stoplight or something. Oh, right, I need to remember to do something. T add, blah blah blah, and then I mistype it, and that's fine. I go back and fix it later. But having something like Matt's application to be able to add those would be nice, and then just to be able to see, like, I have a shopping list, and maybe a list of stuff to do outside or something like that. Like, just be able to see a couple lists, real straightforward, just because I need to check something. Would be good. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
And the Python bindings, it looks like those are sort of stalled out, so maybe we can ping on that issue. But I'm also a little hesitant to jump forward on those because I think I want to change the way the Task Champion interface works. And I'm kind of in the midst of working on that now. I haven't really done anything for a week. But I'd kind of like to wait till afterward to do that, after I finish the recording. And I'll mute for the
Okay. Yeah, I actually didn't get to finish the recording from a month ago, so I actually don't know what, Matt, you're doing at the moment. I only just saw that you started talking about that, and then I was like, oh, it's already 2, so I better jump.
Yeah, nothing further with the syncing to my phone, if that's what you're referring to right now, Max.
Yeah, that's what I meant. So I just heard that you basically you use sync thing, but then we were talking about a plain text file. So is it really just a single report that you end up exporting via your cron job, or
It's really just a simple report. So that's what it does. It just makes a quick, like, I think I do task like inbox, or it's not task inbox, it's the one that picks up the couple of tags that I really care about and prioritize it above a certain urgency threshold. Those are the only ones that I let myself see on the phone. And like, I could see the longer list, but it's not necessary to bring all those like back burner tasks with me on my when I'm out.
Mm.
that makes sense?
Yeah, that seems like a really good approach. I like that. Well, thank you, Max. That was terrific.
Yeah, sure.
Dustin, I think at this point we turn it over to you for your updates.
So I made a new section in the project. I can move here actually to look at what's gone on in the last 2 weeks. So this should be a little easier than trying to flip through things. Felix has been working pretty hard on a little bit on libshared, which is the library that TaskWarrior and TimeWarrior both use. So there was some test changes there. We had a new contributor on Task Champion, replacing some old macro with a new function that's available in newer versions of Rust. So one of those good first bugs kind of brought someone in. There's a lot of folks that want to do Rust and are looking for, like, 1 hour kind of tasks in Rust, and there's a couple of those in Task Champion, and a couple of them in TaskWarrior as well. So those have been useful, and I think it's nice that you guys both made your first contributions here. I hope we can continue to do that, and I'm happy to see that you're both back more contributions because that's kind of the whole idea. But those getting started bugs are a good way to get used to a project, get used to a language if you're not familiar with it, and just get used to interacting with people on a project. So try to be helpful for new folks at whatever level they need. And I think once they see that kind of level of interaction and helpfulness, it's pretty good. Let's see, we done TaskWarrior. Was there was some work to change recurrences because we had this situation. I think this has been a long time thing where if you set something to recur daily, say, and then that was on your laptop that was closed for a couple months because you were on vacation or something, and you open that laptop back up and you type a task command, suddenly it hangs because it's creating all of those daily tasks since 3 months ago to now, and suddenly you have 90 tasks. So a couple people had made issues about this, and that sort of naive thought was, well, why would we create a recurring task in the past? It's due. It's already been due. Probably not going to do that if you're also going to create one in the future. So, so I changed the recurrence to basically only create tasks from the beginning of today onward. Anything before that, we just don't create. And this seemed to make a lot of sense, but Felix found that this is causing other kinds of recurrences to fail. So I'm still going to look at that. So I think we've introduced a bug with this change, but hopefully that can be fixed.
It'd be better if you could say given today, you backtrack what is the latest occurrence that is not already overdue and only create that one and then anything in the future.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, that is a good idea.
Because if you're thinking about like something that is on a longer recurrence time than just a day, but maybe something like 2 weeks, then what you were suggesting might be you might be missing the one that was started a week ago, and you're only creating one that is going to start next week, but you're not in that, you don't have that one, right?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think the reason I've done startup today was that it's common to type to create a task due today, recur weekly, and the time that it samples what today means for due today, and then looks at the recurrences is a couple milliseconds later. So you find that one to be in the past. But I think your solution's a better one. So I'm not sure if that'll fix this particular bug, but hopefully it will. I can give that a try. Thank you for that. Bunch of sort of documentation kind of updates. We deprecated task D and task server finally, so that repo is archived and stuff like that. Implemented task purge. Well, that's in review still. So we'll be able to actually like remove a task as opposed to just marking it as deleted. And I think the docs are clear enough there that like the lawyers are still going to find this. You can't actually remove all traces of a task from the database. You can just remove it from showing up in reports. And also task expiration. That landed. So we have the option to automatically delete tasks if they haven't been modified for half a year and they're deleted. That's part of Task Champion, and we introduced that in Task Champion with the idea of sort of starting fresh from TaskWarrior and thinking that you really just want to track things that you're still working on and not keep a whole bunch of history. And that way you can go through a lot of tasks without having an ever-increasing task database. Because a lot of TaskWarrior people like to keep their history. So we're making that optional and default off. But if you do want to kind of clean up after yourself, enabling expiration is a good way to actually purge those very old tasks that you haven't looked at under 80 days. Those are two of the sort of task purge and task expiration were two of the things that we want for the 3.10 release. So happy to have those done. There's not a lot left for the 3.1 release, so we need to fix this bug that we found. And I need to think about whether I'm going to change how much I want to change the task cluster interface. That's the Task Champion interface in this release, but maybe not much. So we're looking at we could do a 3.10 release in the next 2 weeks. That's the bottom line. I think we're in good shape. Other questions about sort of ongoing development that I can answer?
Yeah, I don't think so.
I think the one thing I'll say for thinking about folks that are here and anyone that's watching this later is right now we have a relatively small number of people who can review changes. Mostly for TaskWarrior, I'm relying on Felix, and for Task Champion, I'm relying on Ryan. Um, so it'd be nice to get folks who are, such as yourselves or others, who are working on a couple things and are willing to do some reviews because you're familiar enough with some part of the code, whether that's part of Task Champion or TaskWarrior or whatever. But I kind of want to develop folks up to that level where there's more folks, more people who can look at a change and say, yes, this makes sense. Let's put it in there. Because if those guys go on vacation, I end up just merging my own changes.
And Matt, what have you been up to the last 2 weeks?
This, I suppose, borders on being out of scope for the Task Warrior meeting because I've been working on the Time Warrior website as well. So I could discuss what I've been up to, but I want to leave that up to you guys.
I'd be interested.
All right. So on the Time Warrior website, one of the issues with the documentation was that. So backing up a little bit, the man pages for Time Warrior are displayed on the Time Warrior website. The issue that has existed for a while is that there's no internal linking of the different documentation. So say, for instance, that you're looking at one man page on the website, it's the function annotate and it links to time w cancel. Well, there's no link, it just references it. So I went through and made a script to add cross references to all of the different pieces of documentation. So that was good, and I was wondering if there was anything like that that we could use on the Task Warrior website. But you can just think about that. Another thing, so right now I'm a work in progress is to transcribe the documentation for Time Warrior. When I say transcribe it, so right now there are screenshots of the different reports of Time Warrior in the documentation, as opposed to normal like text files that are rendering on the website using Markdown/Hugo. Hugo is what we use to render both websites for Task Warrior and Time Warrior. And the weakness there is that screenshots that, well, I'll go into the reason why we need the screenshots first. The Time Warrior reports use nice colors to like differentiate between the different tasks that you've done throughout the day. But the weakness on the website is that if we were to render these in just plain text as opposed to the screenshots, we would lose that color because Hugo/Goldmark, the thing that Hugo uses to render the markdown files, doesn't do coloring so easily for those kinds of reports. So I'm looking into potential alternatives for how to kind of work around that and do some post processing. But stay tuned on that. That's a work in progress right now. And also going back into Task Warrior a little bit, I made a little tool for Task Warrior myself. I worked about a month ago on the tools page, the filtering for the tools page, and I was like, it'd be cool if I could make a little tool for myself. So I made one of those, just like screwing around. So that was fun.
Cool. That's very cool. Max, is there anything that you were like you mentioned that Task Warrior was the first open source project that you've contributed to. Was there anything that you were thinking to contribute going forward, or are you just here for general interest, or where are you at?
So I'm here for general interest, as well as, I mean, I wanted to really look into getting that minimal interface going that I can view from a browser on my phone. Because I'm fairly happy with how vanilla TaskWarrior works. I didn't encounter any bugs recently on my end. There's nothing that is like super on my radar. Although when I was looking at, I actually don't remember, earlier this week or maybe last week, I stumbled across some of these performance reports that talk about the performance degradation in TaskWarrior 3, which I haven't encountered. So I don't really recall how I ended up in one of those issues, but I was like, okay, that could be an interesting thing to try to track down, but I would suspect that that is quite an intricate problem. But I don't know, maybe if some spare time arises, I could have a look at those. But yeah, time is always the limiting factor here.
Yeah, for all of us, I think.
Yeah. I do recall that like back like many years back, I recall that there was a plan on like overhauling how the recurrence implementation is done in the first place. Has that actually taken place under the hood, or is this stalled in progress somewhere? Okay, I see it shaking of heads. All right.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think that was Tomas planning on working on that. I don't know how far it got in terms of planning. There was kind of a collection of issues and there was an old RFC that I think was not the way that they wanted to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think all the people in Gothenburg Bit Factory just sort of got busy with other stuff. It kind of just never happened. So I didn't really realize that was planned when we came back in and started doing 3.0. So a lot of people saw 3.0 out. I'm like, great, that's supposed to be recurrence, and then nothing changed with recurrence. So I disappointed some people, I think, by not realizing that link was there. You know, folks that want to work on that, there's nothing stopping them. They're just
to my understanding, the plan was mostly an internal refactor, right? In the sense of making the code easier to maintain and extend. Because I don't know if they actually wanted to change the user-facing behavior, or maybe just make it easier. I don't know. I don't work with recurrence a lot, or I don't use it, so I wasn't actually sure what exactly was planned. But I was just curious if that ever did happen or not.
I think that the plan was, I think it was mostly going to be an internal refactor, but they wanted to be able to support less regular recurrences, right? So on the first of every month or quarterly or something like that.
Maybe even just like the moment I mark this as done, give me another one.
Right. Yeah. So basically more flexible, because there's a lot of use cases for recurrence that we don't support right now. The other that I'm interested in now that we have Task Champion is it'd be nice to fix this. You have to run right now. You have to run recurrence on exactly one of your replicas, and not on the rest if you're syncing. Otherwise, you'll get multiple copies of those recurrent tasks. Every replica will create them. And it would be nice to find a way to do recurrence that doesn't occur. And I think with Task Champion Sync, if two replicas do exactly the same thing, those will just merge just fine. So the idea would be that when you make a recurring task, if that recurring task is always the same, regardless of who creates it, same UUID, exactly the same timestamps, same description, all that, then those would merge nicely. So I want to kind of think about doing recurrence in a way that every replica can just generate them, and then when they sync, it'll all be exactly the same task, and the updates make the task sync just fine. So maybe when we do recurrence, we'll mix that in with these other proposals. Again, no one's actually working on that. Just something I've spent a couple of months thinking about.
Yeah. No, that'd be cool.
Dustin, is there anything you need help with to get the 3.1 version out the door?
No, I don't think so. I think when we fix this potential recurrence bug, and we can take a look at whether enough is done there to ship it, and get that done. And then the next thing I want to focus on is really this kind of Task Champion interface change that I've been thinking about for a while, but really just need to stop trying to solve bugs for a little while on this, and that will probably be the next couple weeks after that. Yeah, I think the things I need help with are, like I said, I'm thinking about review, basically getting more people with some expertise somewhere in this constellation of projects. The other side of that that's pretty visible is I've put bunch of topic tags on issues, like topic recurrence, topic performance. There's a couple others in there, labels, not tags. And that's kind of me saying, great, this is about recurrence. I really don't know much about recurrence, so I'm done with this issue. Oh, and time. So Matt, maybe since you're interested in TaskWarrior, those would be, a lot of those are like, how can we have, end of the first Thursday after the quarter begins, kind of like there's some really weird time things in that. It might be interesting for folks who are interested in that sort of thing. But those are kind of areas of TaskWarrior that I think someone could develop some expertise in without having to understand the whole thing, and then be able to, a lot of those bugs are probably pretty shallow, and maybe just how do I do this, or why isn't this working the way I think it is, or what's this simple change I could make to add this new recurrence frequency or something like that. But they're just not something I use, not something I'm familiar with, so not something I can solve. So yeah, I think getting more either expertise in being able to review or understand parts of TaskWarrior and help other users would be the kind of general thing we need right now.
Well, that sounds terrific. Sounds like you're well on your way to success there. Well, I don't have anything else on the agenda. Is there anything else you guys would like to talk about?
Matt, are you an admin on the TaskWarrior repo?
Yeah, if that's the permission that allows for merges and therefore updates to the website, then the answer is yes to that.
It might be. I just wanted to see if you can try adding that project, adding the TaskWarrior project to it, then those issues would show up in the what happened in the last 2 weeks view and stuff like that. I think it makes sense to talk about TaskWarrior and TaskWarrior and TaskWarrior in the same meeting. More the merrier. So.
Sure. Could you elaborate on what you mean adding the project there?
So there's let's see. I think this view for you should have some option to add project. The project thing that I'm looking at is in the org level under projects, and we can rename this to GTB development if we want. But this has a nice like Kanban board style thing that I kind of watch what's going on right now. Has that last 2 weeks view that I use to talk about what we've done last 2 weeks. And you wouldn't need to use all of this if you don't want to, but it would be nice if the stuff that's going on in TaskWarrior showed up here as well as these 3 repos, just so we can make sure we talk about it in these meetings.
Sure. So I'll do one of 2 things. I'll either add it myself or make sure that Thomas Laufta adds it. So consider that done.
Okay, cool.
And you're talking specifically about TaskWarrior as opposed to the TaskWarrior website repo.
We could have both. I think anywhere that action is happening in the Gothenburg Bit Factory organization, we might as well include in that project as a kind of general view of it.
Got it. Perfect. And thank you for helping me learn about a new function I didn't know about in GitHub, the projects thing. That's cool.
I'm just learning it myself.
All right, well, that brings us to the bottom of the hour and the end of the official meeting. But if anyone wants to stick around and chat, the room will stay open as long as there are people here.